Hello and welcome to Stucratic podcast. Tune in when life goes out of tune.
Welcome to Stucratic FM. In today's episode, from excuses to exploration, our guest for today is Julia Baribeau. Let's begin.
On this episode, we have guest speaker Julia Baribeau, recent graduate from mechatronics engineering at University of Waterloo from Canada. During her time in undergrad, she endeavored on a 2-month solo trip to India to learn more about sustainable community-centric development and decentralized education and clean energy. Today, we'll hear how to seek out opportunities like that, strategies for overcoming barriers including finances, and convincing her parents to let her go halfway across the world on her own, and also what her experience in India was like and how it changed her outlook on life and career path. I'm your host for this episode, Yukta, serving as the president of IUC EWV VVIT. Julia is calling in from Canada. Welcome to Stucratic FM, Julia.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
So you graduated from University of Waterloo in spring 2023 from mechatronics engineering. For any of our listeners who don't know what is mechatronics, could you please explain it?
Yeah, so mechatronics engineering is a combination of mechanical, electrical, software, and systems design engineering. So the idea of having a mechatronics specific discipline is that they can train us to act as the interface between all of these systems. So a mechatronic system could be an airplane or a dishwasher or a robot, anything that has mechanical, electrical, software parts all working together as a system.
Well, that sounds like a lot of subjects together. So what made you interested in studying mechatronics engineering?
Well, ever since I was little, I wanted to be everything. I've had a wide variety of interests and hobbies, so mechatronics appealed to me because I could still learn a little bit about each different discipline while learning how to get them to work together. So I liked that more than being a refined specialist in one area. I got interested in robotics from a course in my high school. I was very lucky that my high school had a robotics course, but we built a sumo bot. So our robots would fight the other robots in the class at the end of the semester. And that project was so much fun. So that is what got me interested in mechatronics. In terms of engineering in general, it appealed to me because at its core, it's about solving problems. And I've always wanted to do work that is tied to that deep sense of purpose and have an impact on the world.
That sounds great, actually. I actually like the part of fighting between two robots.
Yeah, that was a fun course.
Yeah. So now that you have graduated, what have you been up to?
Well, after I graduated last spring, I took most of a year and traveled as much as I could on my co-op savings from working during my degree. I went to West Europe for a month with some friends. I went to West Canada for 3 months, and Southeast Asia and Nepal for 3 months before coming back to Canada at the end of last year. Everywhere I went, I was looking for examples of inspiring work, especially related to water. I'm very interested in water sustainability. I mean, water is so important. If you don't have water, you don't have anything. It is literally life. So I sought out cool projects in these different countries during my travels. In Singapore, I got a tour of their new water reclamation plant. So because they're a small country, they can't collect too much rainfall, and it's entirely city. So one of the strategies they have for supplementing the water they have available is reclaiming all of the water from their sewers, filtering it so it has absolutely no contaminants. It doesn't even have any minerals left in it. And then that gets used for industry, manufacturing purposes that require super pure water, and that leaves mineral-rich, healthy drinking water from rainfall for people to drink. I saw a bioremediation pond in Cambodia that uses reeds to treat sewage and create compost. When I was in Indonesia, I got a tour of the Subak Sustainable Agricultural System. In Nepal, I met a tour guide and runner who organized an ultramarathon, I think 100 kilometers, as a fundraiser for his village because their water source had moved down the mountain after the earthquake and it was inaccessible. And then also on that ultramarathon, he had the runners pick up water filter supplies at the checkpoints and carry them and drop them off at these remote villages that you can only get to by foot or by yak. So that was a really creative and effective way of getting clean water supplies to these remote places. So yeah, I did a lot of traveling and looking for these cool, inspiring projects. And now I'm back home. I'm working in a sustainability consulting engineering firm named Enviro Stewards. We work with industrial manufacturers, the agricultural industry, municipalities, all sorts of businesses to help them achieve their sustainability goals. A lot of that, for example, is going into factories and making observations, taking measurements, collecting data, and then analyzing that data and finding opportunities for how that factory can use less energy, use less water, waste less food or product, cut back on their natural gas use, other sustainability strategies like that. I really like my job. I find it very rewarding, and I feel like I can really have an impact with what I've learned in school. I've been working there since April.
Actually, when you have love towards your job, then it doesn't sound a pretty hard thing. So tell me your journey about to India. How did that come into your way, and like what made it?
Yeah, that came about in a roundabout way. So in the end, I ended up spending 2 months living in Rajasthan, pretty much, on my own, living with different NGOs in India and learning from their work. And it was such an amazing opportunity. How it started was, I'll give some context for my schooling program. My engineering program was co-op structured, so cooperative education. I would study and have classes for 4 months and then have a co-op placement where I'm working full-time for 4 months in a job or an internship related to my field of study. One of my co-op terms was for a manufacturer of small electric motors, for example, for e-bikes and golf carts, and my task was to build a semi-automated apparatus or machine or workstation, I guess you could call it, to improve the hand winding of electric motor stator coils. The technical details aren't really important. The point is, after I made this device, my manager gave me the opportunity to develop a business model that used this device to manufacture electric motors in developing areas of the world. A few months later, I had sat in on a speaker session with my university's chapter of Engineers Without Borders, and one of the guest speakers was named Raj Rajaram. He is from Engineers Without Borders, India, and he was really inspiring, so I had written down his email after that session. At my co-op term with this business idea, it was time for me to learn a little bit about international development. So I knew I would need a mentor. I reached out to Raj, asking if he would be able to help me. Raj said that he could mentor me if I decided to implement my idea in India, where he has all his contacts and where he's familiar with. So that's how I got focused on India specifically. Raj gave me a list of organizations and people he knew whose values aligned with mine. Specifically, I was interested in accessible education, women empowerment, and sustainable electrification. So he told me to select 3 organizations from his list and write letters asking to go visit them and learn from their work. So that's what I did. He delivered my letters for me over email and put me in touch with these organizations. And all 3 of them were very supportive and enthusiastic about me coming to learn from them. So those organizations was IUCE, the SM Segal Foundation, and Barefoot College. IUCE, the Indo-Universal Collaboration for Engineering Education, as far my impression of it, it works to coordinate collaboration and inspiration among students in India and around the world. The SM Segal Foundation focuses on community empowerment, education, agriculture, women empowerment, and water security. And Barefoot College in Rajasthan, in the village of Talonia, also focuses on community-led, community-focused sustainable development in water, education, women's rights, clean energy, agriculture, all sorts of disciplines. The program that I was really interested in at Barefoot College is their solar education program, where they train women, particularly women with some literacy or no literacy, so they can be solar engineers in their remote communities and bring clean energy and empowerment to their villages. So I wanted to learn how that program worked, learn from it, and implement that in my own business idea. My business idea, though, for the electric motor manufacturing did not work out. It got complicated with intellectual property rights, and at one point I realized I was in no way prepared to start and run a business like that at the stage of life that I was in. But I still had these invitations and resources, so I wanted to make the most of them. So instead of running this electric motor manufacturing business, I pivoted. At the time, I was taking a course about water, and we were focusing on the water crisis in Indigenous communities in Canada. So I decided to pivot my project and my resources to focus on that topic. Now, for our listeners who aren't familiar with this issue, it may come as a surprise that many people in Canada don't have access to clean drinking water, because we're known as a rich country with a lot of freshwater lakes and water resources. But this issue comes from a long history of colonization and racist laws. Basically, for a crash course in Canadian history, England and France started forming a colonial government called Canada in 1867, was when it became a country. As part of the process of forming Canada, all of the people who were already living here, Indigenous people, of which there are many different nations, many different cultures and different languages, they were forced into reserves, which are small territories of land that were usually not deemed valuable. And then the Canadian colonial police force and military forced the Indigenous people to stay in reserves. So it was sort of a imprisonment. Their languages and cultural practices were made illegal. It was illegal for Indigenous people to gather in groups greater than 3. Something called the residential school system was established and run by the colonial government and the Catholic Church. And that involved taking children away from their homes at a young age and keeping them there. The goal of these so-called schools was not to provide quality education. It was, according to the literal Canadian government written in law, the goal was to kill the Indian in the child. So that word Indian meaning there means Indigenous people from North America, also known as Turtle Island, not Indian from India. Many children died at these schools from neglect and disease and starvation. We are still uncovering mass graves in recent years. And among survivors, the trauma that was endured and the intergenerational links and knowledge that was broken to these systems still has lasting effects. Reserves were never meant to be a proper living place for citizens. They were designated basically as a place for the older generation of Indigenous people to die off, while the young ones were forcibly assimilated into European culture through this system of residential schools. As a result, the Canadian government never invested in any infrastructure on these reserves. So while non-reserve communities in Canada have very, very good water and very high standards of living, there are a lot of Indigenous communities still with no clean water. Some have water, but it is too toxic even to take a bath in. So there's no choice but to pay for bottled water or to bring it in on trucks, other things like that. So basically, with this course I was taking, this issue was at the front of my mind. And it seems like something that I could maybe help with the resources I had available to learn from in India. In particular, I thought that if I could learn how the solar education program works at Burfoot College and what makes it so effective, I could maybe model a similar education program for women to become water technicians in their own communities. And that way progress could be made and water treatment operators could be trained while waiting for the federal government to get their act together.
So actually knowing about the history made me a little amazed actually. Having the toxic water that which like you can't even bathe with. Oh my god, that should be a lot of hardest thing. So pivoting your project focus was one barrier to overcome this journey. Another one which I know looms large for many students in finance. As a student, did you put together the money to fly across the world from Canada to India and all?
Basically, I was speaking to everyone I knew and met and every mentor I could find about my idea and what I wanted to achieve. Why I wanted to go to India. Someone I met at a coffee event told me about a program called Greenhouse at my university. Greenhouse is a social incubator. So what that means is they provide education, guidance, and funding for undergraduate students to develop business ideas and entrepreneurial plans for ventures that have a positive impact on society or the environment. I was encouraged to join this program, and of course I jumped at that chance. The program lasted 3 or 4 months, and they taught us, we met once a week. They taught us the basics of entrepreneurship and measuring social impact, making an elevator pitch, like a 3-minute presentation to ask for funding from investors. And then at the end of the 3 or 4 months, there was the Social Impact Showcase, which was a pitch competition including all the students who had been going through this program together. So there were a dozen or so social ventures that I had been learning with, competing in this pitch competition together. And there was a lump sum of money that could be distributed between the projects as the judges saw fit. My project was one of the winners, and that gave me the funding to cover my flights to India, my accommodations there, although I stayed as cheaply as possible as a volunteer, and a few other resources I needed, such as travel immunizations, an audio recorder to take interviews with the solar mamas, things like that. Also, I had been saving money from my past co-op terms, my work terms, so I knew with the amount of savings from that, I would still be able to afford to pay my tuition for my upcoming school terms, even if I didn't make income on this one co-op term. So that's why I was able to, with the Greenhouse Social Impact Funding, to be a volunteer in India for that term rather than having to find a paid job.
So you were so planned actually. So how did convincing your parents being the toughest part for you, traveling on and on to India?
Yeah, that was the next challenge, telling my parents that I would be okay traveling solo and not to worry about me too much. I had never really left Canada at that point, so this was going to be my first overseas trip, and they knew that I would stand out, of course, as a foreigner, and they were really worried. But what I did was, firstly, I coordinated with the 3 different organizations I was in touch with to make sure that I would never actually be alone. So I would have people to meet up with when I got there, to travel with, to stay with, and as long as I'm not alone, it wouldn't be so dangerous. I set up video calls between my parents and the new allies and friends in India. Sampadaji from IUCEE was one of those contacts, and she was so wonderful to me, so kind. She offered to be my India mom, and I'm so grateful for the kindness that she showed me. She met up with me on my first few days in India with a care package of some things that I couldn't bring on the flight from Canada, or that I might not be able to get in Talonia, so some groceries. I have a lot of allergies, so I knew I would have to cook my own food. I'm allergic to dairy, to milk, and to dal. So you can imagine living in Rajasthan for 2 months would be challenging. I stocked up on beans, and that would be my protein source. Isapataji was my emergency contact in India, so she was someone I could call if I was in trouble, or my parents could call her if they were concerned about me, and she wasn't too far away, so she would be able to come help me. Also, I made a very detailed itinerary for my parents to explain where I would be at all times, who I would be with, who they could contact in an emergency, things like that. Because my allergies were a concern, I stocked up on EpiPens, and I got a cooling case that works through evaporation that makes sure that my medicine doesn't get too hot and that it doesn't need any electricity to be effective, just water. Eventually, after a few months of planning from the time that I had brought it up first with my parents to that point, I had found funding on my own and coordinated with all these different organizations on my own. So that definitely helped. And eventually they felt okay with the idea, though they were still very concerned for me. Some other measures I took were to give them 24/7 tracking access of my phone. And I would check in with them every single day by text or call to let them know where I had been and where I was going. And some general safety tips as a woman traveler of, never drinking alcohol, not getting intoxicated or being out late, always traveling with a group of people I trust. All of that helped keep me safe.
In India, it could have been a different case, literally. The little parents traveling abroad all alone and getting them to a proper assurance kind of thing, giving them all the assurance. If we are stepping out with our friends also, our parents need, okay, give me their parents' contact, give me their contact, everything. Maybe parents of a girl are going to be the same way everywhere. What was your experience once you got to India?
I landed in New Delhi airport and I was picked up by someone from the SM Sehgal Foundation and brought to their Gurugram office. There, I met their 2 American interns, and the first day we went to the mall to get me some Indian clothes because we were going on a site visit the next morning. So I got a kurti. The next day we drove to Gagas in Haryana and we saw a community radio station that was used for education and even remote schooling during COVID-19. We saw an in-person school that had been renovated to have clean drinking water and girls' bathrooms. There I learned that girls not having access to bathrooms can be a barrier for education because when they get their period, they wouldn't be able to come to school and clean up and everything. So this school also had beautiful murals painted everywhere, educational murals and maps, things like that. It was a beautiful place. Then I visited the office of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute in New Delhi just for a day, connected them with the Sehgal Foundation to hopefully inspire more Indo-Canadian student opportunities such as internships. And so the first week arriving in India was definitely an adjustment period, but it was more familiar than I expected. So New Delhi is the biggest city I had ever been in, and it was busy and structured differently from my hometowns. So getting used to that was different, but I learned that the people were all pretty much the same. Everyone had a sense of humor that I was used to and working in jobs just like everywhere else. So it was eye-opening my first time being very far from home, seeing that we have far more in common with other countries than perceived differences. So after a week and a half in New Delhi, I went to the village of Talonia in Rajasthan. And there I lived on Barefoot College campus for 2 months. At Barefoot College, I volunteered in the plant nursery and the Solar Mama training program. So I'll touch more on the Solar Mamas right now. They are illiterate or semi-literate women from remote communities around the world who learn practical solar engineering and then go home and solar electrify their villages. After 3 to 6 months learning practical solar engineering skills like numeracy, soldering, troubleshooting, installing solar panels, they set up a workshop and start a business, getting solar products into their home village. Many of the solar mamas also become trainers, teaching other women the same skills that they have learned. And because these women are from different communities all over the world, they all speak different languages, and the classes can't be taught in a common language. You might have 40 students, 3 of them speak Marathi, and 3 of them speak Spanish, and all of these different languages from different communities. So the learning is emphasized to be hands-on, picture-based. The master trainers will show how to solder, how to troubleshoot, and everyone communicates through gestures, sort of like sign language. The time when I was there was right after COVID-19. So the country was still just opening up, and there weren't that many international applicants. So all of the solar mamas of the cohort who I saw were from Rajasthan, I believe, different small communities. So I was the only one who didn't know the languages because I didn't know Hindi or Marathi. And there was one person in the solar program who knew a little bit of English, but most of the time I would communicate by drawing little pictures in my notebook, making gestures and showing pictures, following people around the best I could. The Solar Mama program trains women specifically. They used to train men as well, but they found that men wanted a certificate and they wanted to leave the village to go to the city to get better work. And there tends to be pressure on men to be a financial provider in that way. But they found that women, and especially mothers and grandmothers, are so grounded in their communities that when they get this training, they stay in the village, and that way this investment gets invested in the villages who need the infrastructure, and it provides a source of financial empowerment and respect for these women. During the cohort I was there, every woman was part of the lowest caste in their community. I think they were almost all from the Valmiki caste, and they had previously been restricted by their communities only to sanitation work. I got the chance to interview some of them through translators at the end of spending my 2 months with them, and we had become quite close over 2 months. But some of them told me what their work was like before, for example, sweeping the village, and you call it to the households whose areas you cleaned and they ignore you, and then if you're persistent enough, the wife of the house may open the window and throw a few roti out on the ground, and that's your wages, that's your payment. Or fixing toilets with your bare hands. And there's this prejudice towards these women, the idea that they're not capable of work that isn't sanitary work. So through the solar program, one of the goals is it forces their community members to be humbled and to realize, oh wow, she has a workshop, she's making solar lanterns, man, do I ever want a solar lantern? And start improving the conditions of all of the people in their communities. So at Barefoot College, I would sit in on the Solar Mama classes in the mornings, and I didn't understand Hindi that they were taught in. I started learning a little bit of Hindi by the end of it, but I would see the diagrams they were drawing, and I had a little bit of background knowledge on electronics, so that was helpful. And then after lunch, I would go work in the plant nursery. So that grows medicinal plants and shade-providing plants to provide to local schools. The plant nursery at Barefoot College grows medicinal plants and shade-providing plants to give to local schools. and fruit and habitat trees to encourage the vulture and other wildlife to return to the region. The plant nursery team also manages campus waste, and recycles organics into biogas, which then fuels the gas stoves in the mess hall. I loved the way of life in Tolonia, and I made friendships that are still going strong halfway across the world, even though I couldn't speak the language of some of the women that I became friends with. I learned that it doesn't matter too much. The human connection is there. And we would show each other photos of our family. And they would make fun of my weird Canadian clothing and show me. At one point, they bought me Rajasthani clothes and showed me how to tie a sari and things like that. So we would dance together. There are so many ways to connect that don't require language. And by the end of the 2 months, we were very close. After lunch, they would invite me to their dorms, and I could have a nap laying my head in one of their laps. We would paint each other's nails. I'm still trying to learn Hindi because I want to be able to chat with these friends that I made. I hope to go back to India sometime soon when I can afford to. So then, near the end of my time in Rajasthan, I was brought to Jaipur to be a guest speaker in Purnima University's International Youth Day celebrations. That's an opportunity that Samfataji helped coordinate, and I'm very grateful to have been a part of it. I met some inspiring people that day, and I earned some confidence in myself in public speaking. Samfata Pachori from IUCE was like a mother to me in India. She kept me safe and cared for. I was a remote guest speaker at the IUCE Student Summit. I was a remote guest speaker at the IUCE Student Summit, hopefully inspiring her students to be adventurous, organized, and resourceful. In Delhi, before my flight home, I got the chance to visit the Collaborative Robotics Lab at IIT Delhi. I learned about their work and presented my own. I really liked their Rural Innovation Lab. They had technology such as these strap-on shin pads, sort of boots, that wrap around trees that you can use to walk vertically up a tree and harvest fruit, such as coconuts. I thought that was so cool. So overall, during the 2 months that I spent in India that summer, I met so many inspiring people. I learned a lot and was really inspired by these different NGOs.
So that was your experience at India. So did you have any negative kind of experiences apart from these sweet memories?
It was overwhelmingly positive for the most part. I had 1 or 2 encounters that weren't the most pleasant. There was some stigma around menstruation and what to do with period products in the village, so that caused me some embarrassment at one point, but I won't get into the details here.
We do have them. Like most of them are still uneducated. You have come to India into a small village, so that most of them are still uneducated and they don't know how to maintain the hygiene and all. So it do happen. So how did this affect your perspective and goals in life, a trip to India?
Yeah, it gave me a lot more perspective on my own home. Seeing different customs and ways of living in some place so different from my home really made me realize my own customs, things that I used to sort of take for granted as that's just the way things are. So that would be the first thing. And the second major thing I learned would be that everyone, everywhere, every institution is just people doing things. It can sometimes be easy to idolize people or institutions involved in really good work that you aren't familiar with. But when you get to know them, they're run by people who are very similar to people you already know. So, for example, with the Solar Mamas, it's such an impactful program doing good work, and it has been running for a long time. I think it started in 2000. And for me, certainly I idolized the program in a sort of mysterious way. So then seeing the day-to-day of how it works was enlightening. Seeing, oh, it's just a class. I've been to classes before. You learn some basic skills. You don't always get it. Teachers are there to help you troubleshoot. There's classroom drama. If someone uses a different soldering iron, someone else gets offended, that's their soldering iron. Just normal things as people going about their days. Having this experience really taught me that good things are just the result of people working together with small, consistent, persistent efforts over time. So that has helped me realize that I am also capable of doing this good work. It just requires consistency. And then the third way that this experience changed my perspective and goals would be that with all my co-op terms prior, I had mostly been doing more solo technical work. And this is my first term being part of a big, energetic community of women working as a team, and I absolutely loved it. So it showed me that one of my values and one thing that I'm going to be looking for in all my future jobs is that kind of strong community in my workplace, and especially a sense of impact, because I think that also works to bring people together as a team and as a community when everyone has that shared sense of purpose. It's so energizing. And lastly, going solo to India really built my confidence in myself as a traveler, that yes, I have the ability to take care of myself and navigate somewhere that I'm unfamiliar with safely. So that really unlocked the door to my future travels. In the fall, I plan to go to Uganda with my work to check on something called the Safe Water Project out there for a week, and then hopefully get the chance to solo travel in Uganda and Rwanda for 2 weeks after that to check it out. Everywhere I travel now, I seek out cool community-focused sustainability projects or examples of successes, and that comes from this experience in India being my first major travel experience. Seeing all these amazing projects has certainly shaped my approach to traveling.
Maybe a trip to India has assured your parents that you can travel alone, do things on your own.
Yeah, a little bit. They're not as scared now when I go to travel alone.
What do you say to students who wish to learn and adventure more?
If you know you're interested in something or there's something you really want to do, keep pursuing it persistently. And it will take longer than you may expect or than you wish it would. But as long as you don't stop trying to get there, it's inevitable that you can achieve what you set your mind to. It's only over if you give up. There's always another way around a barrier or something you can pivot to when your first or second or 50th idea doesn't work out. And if you know that you care about something, whether that's sustainability or health in certain populations or education or really good product design or cooking, could be anything. If you find something that you're excited to do, excited to think about, and excited to work on projects related to it, you have to pursue it. If you try to leave your passions behind and pursue something that your parents want you to do or that you think is the thing that everyone else wants to do or the more profitable path, your passions will come back around and they will get you eventually. So you might as well embrace them in the first place and find a way to integrate them into your life. But let's say that you don't even know what you want to do, which is where I was when I started out. That's fine. Step one is to get involved in as many spaces as possible. Just meet people, take note of who inspires you and what work inspires you, and talk to as many people as possible in many different industries and fields and levels of experience, because you never know who is going to be a connecting thread, who can open a door for you in the future. And by getting involved in so many things, you will eventually learn, first of all, what you don't like to do, what you're not that interested in, what doesn't inspire you, and then you will naturally gravitate towards your passions. And over time, you'll get clarity on what you value and what you want to do. So that would be my advice. Get involved, speak to people, find what you love and pursue it.
So that is all about Julia coming to India, doing her project, getting to know about her idea, how it's going to show impact or not, accepting the reality, traveling all alone, managing her financial needs, planning them accordingly, making new friends, networking, and that's all about Julia.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. It was really a pleasure and an honor to be featured. Thank you.
And for audience, if we missed out anything or if you have any more queries, you can reach us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And that's for this episode. We'll see you in the next episode of Stucratic FM. Tune in when life goes out of tune.